I'm Jenny Klochko. You're watching my podcast, the platform for guest stories beyond your daily newsfeed. Today, it's literally away from newsfeed. I would like us to look at Russian war in Ukraine through the eyes of writer, serviceman, the man who was born in the east of Ukraine, and we will discuss: is Ukrainians and Russian the same? What's identity? And many, many other things which Russian propaganda uses against Ukraine in this war of information, narratives, and many, many other things. So my guest today, Pavlo Belyansky, is writer, serviceman, and just a very nice man. Hello, how are you?
Hi, right now I'm doing quite well, not bad, because they let me out of the hospital and patched me up a bit. I had some back pain because you're constantly walking around in body armor, a classic military issue, so to speak. So yeah, it's one of those typical soldiers' ailments affecting the back, but now it's not too bad.
Pavlo, I got to know you. You don't know about this, but I got to know you back in August 2022. I was in Ukraine on one of my trips as a journalist. I went to the cinema. I watched a film that was based on your book, your bestseller. I work at the cemetery. Usually I don't react to titles like that. Pavlo Belyansky didn't ring any bells for me, since I've been living outside of Ukraine for quite a while. So your name didn't trigger anything at that time. But I went to the movie because I really missed Ukraine. When you come back for a month and try to immerse yourself in all aspects of Ukrainian life, just soak it all in. The energy stays with you and warms you for a long time. And that's exactly what happened with your film. I went with a friend and we watched it, and honestly, I had zero expectations. I mean, I work at the cemetery. What could a movie with that title possibly be about? But there was so much humanity in it, so much soul, so much subtle humor. If someone asked me what the film was about, I'd probably say it's about people, because people in it, they were all different. They good, interesting, surprising, kind, awkward, unpolished.
There aren't any outright good characters there. They're all just like real people. There's no one you'd say is completely lovable, no character who's 100% good. There just aren't any like that, because 100% good people don't exist.
And of course, I found you on Facebook. I read your posts, and every time I did, well, they are not long, they are relatively short, so I could read them anytime during the day, whether I was running around or sitting somewhere. There are certain posts or articles I set aside for the evening because I know once I read them, I won't be able to pull myself together afterwards. But yours, I read them no matter where I am or how I'm feeling. For me, it was something. I compared it to how I perceive the war. Because when you are over here in London, the things are happening in Ukraine. First, the invasion, then different phases of war. Your perception becomes distorted. At first, you think, oh, that's it. Nothing will be left, just dust and no memory of Ukraine. Then you start seeing these incredible heroes, these cyborgs, almost superhuman figures defending Ukraine. Then, for personal reasons, I ended up going to Покровsk and I saw those so-called superhumans. And I was shocked because I realized they were the same people I might see on the underground, on the bus, in a shop, just ordinary people who made the choice to go and defend. And I thought, wait, where are those perfect heroes? Where are the titans? Where's all that grandeur? Social media distort everything, shows things differently, but in your posts, they are real people. They are vulnerable. They are soldiers, but they are vulnerable. They go off to defend and they are scared and they're standing in the trenches, but they have tears in their eyes. And that doesn't make them any less brave or strong or courageous. What is really like? I mean, of course, it's vast, deep, and unformidable thing. But if you had to condense it somehow, how would you convey it? How would you describe it?
You know, I had this one story. We were heading to a position. I was driving. At the time, I had this beat-up old car from Britain, a right-hand drive Pajero. I always joked that if any fines came in, they'd probably go to Paul McCartney, because of course, it was his car, right? Straight from Britain. So we're driving to the position. There's this road going downhill. The village is somewhere below. And on the opposite hill, the Russians were already stationed. From there, they had a pretty clear view of us. I'm driving, body armor, helmet, the full gear. The guys are in the back. It was my first time going to that position. They tell me, you need to drive really fast now. They can already see us. If they start shooting, we're done for. So I'm driving fast, and then suddenly, boom, an explosion hits to the side, and I realize it's a tank. You can tell by the way it hits. First the impact, then the sound of the shot. With a tank shell fired at short range, it moves at supersonic speed. That means you hear the explosion before you hear the shot. It's terrifying, incredibly powerful. The guys start yelling, "Pashtet, drive, drive." So I'm pushing it, flying down toward the village. Then the road takes a sharp turn, 90 degrees, a short stretch, then another sharp 90-degree turn. Basically an L-shaped bend. I know I'll need to slow down to make the turn properly. It's tight and I can't take it fast. But then boom, again from the side. Another hit. Shrapnel slams into the vehicle, dirt flying everywhere, the sound deafening. I'm going numb from the noise. The guys are shouting, "Go, go, he's gonna hit us there." I knew if I made that turn, the tank would already have its sights set on that exact spot and would take us out. So I thought, nope, not turning there. I'll just go off-road into someone's yard. And right there was a garden, the first house of the village. So at full speed, I veer off the road. And it turns out there's a drop from the road, maybe a meter down. We go airborne and then slam into the ground. The impact was brutal. My front wheel buckles, locks up completely. The steering wheel yanked so hard, it ripped the bolts. I had no steering. The wheel was just flailing side to side from the impact. We're hit again. Another explosion just above us. Tank fire again. Dirt pouring onto us. The guys are screaming, "Pashtet, move. We're gonna die. Go." But how do I go? The front wheel's jammed. It broke off. We can't drive forward. I switched to rear-wheel drive. Thank God it's four-wheel drive. And somehow managed to crawl forward, scraping through this garden. And just as we're barely moving, trying to survive, suddenly, boom, another tank shot nearby. And I'm thinking, God, please just let us live. He's going to kill us. He's going to kill us right now. And right at that moment, out of a cellar, a little basement, this woman comes running toward us across her garden, yelling, "Hey, what are you doing? Get off the cucumbers. Go left, left." This is war. You asked me what war is like. This is it. It's all right there, side by side. Death and laughter, mud and something heroic, betrayal and lifelong brotherhood. It's all mixed together. Things that should never, ever exist side by side, There they do. People meet there who, in regular life, would never even be at the same bus stop. And yet in war, they become brothers. They fight shoulder to shoulder. That's what war is like.
I wonder, what has the war normalized for you? You know, if I didn't know that you worked at the cemetery in your civilian life, I would say, oh, maybe it normalized death for you, but I hope it's something else.
Well, it didn't normalize death itself, but rather the fear of death. I mean, death becomes a normal part of life, like you can be gone at any moment. Like Polozinski says in one of his songs, everything can change in an instant. You're just sitting there, everything's fine, and then, boom, an explosion, and that's it. Everything changes. Suddenly. So it's the fear of death that becomes part of you. You get used to it, not to death itself. I don't know if one can really get used to death, but you can get used to fearing it. You get used to the idea that you don't belong to yourself. You belong to your commander, to the state. Your fate, it's in their hands. So you stop planning. Completely. You know what the army doesn't have? Privacy. You're never alone. You do everything with someone else. If you're in the army, I don't know. Even going to the toilet, you go with a brother in arms so someone's watching in case something happens. So yeah, there's no privacy. And there are no plans for the future. What kind of plans can you even have? You don't even dream. It's not just about having no plans. You literally stop dreaming. There's nothing to dream about. I mean, you still plan your life somehow, but it's military life. You just move from one task to the next. And you know there are no problems. That's something the war taught me. There's no such thing as problems, only assignment. You don't treat anything as a problem, because if it's a problem, it has no solution. But if it's the assignment, it does, and you just go and do it. You look at yourself and ask, okay, something happened. What do I do? If there's something that can be done, then it's not a problem. It's an assignment.
Interesting. Listen, I can understand those guys and girls who, a long time ago chose a military career. They gradually develop that military identity where your commander is like your king and god, where you don't belong to yourself. And privacy, actually, for me, that was probably the hardest part. Having your own space. And for you, do you think the same? Do you think just a matter of getting used to it? I guess it is in a way. But you, as a civilian, as a writer, you have this naturally philosophical, observant view on life. And now suddenly you are in a situation where you might not even have a great commander, not necessarily someone smart, not necessarily someone you'd want to follow. But in military paradigm during the war, he is your king and god. So how do you deal with that? I mean, soldiers have certain mental mechanisms that kick in, but what about you?
And the relationship with the commander? Well, he's just a person too. Actually, it's harder for him than for me. You see, commanders often think, what if he writes something? Like I give an order, and then he writes about it. That's the thing. I'm dangerous for the unit, not for myself. It's more of a problem for them than for me. At the beginning, when I first joined the military, I tried not to tell anyone who I was or what I did before. I hid my past, tried to blend in, partly because I wanted to earn respect among the guys as a soldier, not because of what I had done before. And I didn't want them to see me through some lens, like I didn't want their perception of me to be preset. I wanted them to see me for who I am, as a person, as a fighter, as a comrade. That was important to me. And on the other hand, I really didn't want them thinking, oh, whatever I do now, he'll write about it, or start trying to keep me away from things so I wouldn't see something and write it down later, like move me somewhere else, or act super perfect around me. Oh, now we're going to do everything by the book because he's watching. That doesn't matter in war. War is just regular life in extreme conditions. So things still happen. Not always, not even unpleasant. More like things can get messy, let's say. So I kept it quiet. It made everything simpler. And then, once they got used to me, once they understood what kind of person I was, how I behaved, what was going on around me, how I fought, only then, maybe after a year, I started to reveal who I was. Well, not even deliberately. It just came out. There was a movie premiere. This was during the war, and I was already serving. Oh God, not a whole year, maybe 8 or 9 months in. The film came out and the guys saw some ad or something online. They were like, oh damn, Pater, Pash Tet, is that you? But before that, there was this one moment. My comrade says to me, hey, I saw this interview with a guy who looked just like you. Man, he was saying the most insane shit. You're not him, right? You're smarter. You're better. And I was like, what kind of weird guy are you talking about?
за интервью и что чувак
They
сказал?
didn't clarify what the interview was or what was said. I don't even remember exactly. I just laughed my ass off. And then later, for them, it just didn't add up. Me and whatever public image they found, like the writing, the blogging, the screenwriting, movies, TV shows, all that stuff seemed like some other person, not me. Because here I was, sitting in a muddy dugout with them, under shelling, doing assaults, sharing a bottle and bathing together out of a single 1.5-liter water bottle, pressed up against each other. That's me. That Kyiv guy, the one doing interviews or writing scripts. That's someone else. Maybe he looks like me, but he's not me. Not anymore.
Oh, that just like in the movie, you have to admit.
Yeah, exactly. Listen, just so you understand, I don't know how to make things up. I always just take what's real, what already exists, and then tweak it a bit. Just enough to fit it into the right moments in a book, a short story or a script. That's how it works.
А ваше сприйняття українських людей, And how's your perception of Ukrainian people changed, men, women, in general? Did the people somehow reveal themselves differently? Here's what I mean. Look, I started traveling to the UK, and for me it was a huge shift. It wasn't my first time abroad, but when I was working for BBC in Kiev, this was in 2009, salaries were small, but the silver lining was there was easy to get a UK visa, and there was real happiness because usually British visa were among the hardest to get. But as BBC employer, they didn't see you as potential illegal prostitute or something like that. And that alone felt like a victory. So I started going, and it was a shock to me. I would arrive to London, of course, as a tourist, you are enchanted, plus my mom is an English teacher, so I grew up with all this whole idolized, polished image of England. Lace, elegance, literature, refinement. So I flew in already completely charmed. And visually, you notice it. We have the Anglo-Saxon types and the Slavs, and the difference is striking. And I was like, oh my God, why they are so beautiful. And then I come home full of thoughts, comparing things. But with the war, and I'm talking 2014 and especially 2022, something changed. Looking at Ukrainian women and men, especially men, they became so stunningly beautiful, just painfully beautiful. And it's not just my perception, it's not just me as a Ukrainian far from home, overwhelmed with emotions, nostalgia, all mixed up together. When the war began, I was working for the British TV channel. We were doing documentaries and news pieces. Our first documentary was done remotely. No one could travel yet because it was the first weeks of the full-scale invasion, so we made it based on people's diaries. People sent us videos. And there was one doctor, another tour guide, someone else joined the territorial defense. They were all so beautiful. I even have a photo somewhere of us, a group of girls in the newsroom watching one of the videos, and we were all just standing there like, oh, that one. And then the single journalist started joking, Jenny, let me go to Ukraine, you can help me find a husband. And they were all like, they're amazing, they're so brave. And I'd say, Emma, of course, there are so many, you could take them by handle. And honestly, it's true. I feel like nation of warriors had awakened, like some ancient spirit, some ancestral connection was reawakened. And I deeply believe, not just believe, if you look at the history, we are the nation of Cossacks, of warriors. And I think this spirit, the spirit of defense, of protectors, runs deeper than we even knew. Did you feel something like that? Did your perception shift? Did people reveal themselves to you in a different way?
One time, my brothers in arms and I were sitting under shelling. It's hard to call it a dugout, really. It was more like a dirt hole, packed tightly with all of us inside. And above us, the shells were pounding hard. It was really, really terrifying. The explosions were landing very close. And to distract ourselves from the fear, we started talking about what it would be like when the war ends, how we'd return, what kind of people we'd be. Everyone said different things, but one of my friends said something that stuck with me. Look, he said, before the war, I was like a nail. They pulled me out and stuck me into the war. But now I've changed. I've learned more. I've become more like a screw. So how am I supposed to go back into that same hole meant for a nail? I just don't fit anymore. I can't go back. I'll probably have to do something else entirely. And this guy, he was a proper working man, a real craftsman, good with his hands. He already knew how to do a lot of things. Unfortunately, he's gone now, killed. He's not coming back. But what I'm trying to say is, this experience of war changes people deeply. Just yesterday, I was in the hospital, my last day there, waiting to be discharged, waiting for the paperwork. And then a thunderstorm hit. A powerful one, with hail, lightning, everything.
With bubbles on the asphalt.
There was real heavy thunder in the sky, and some of the guys were hiding under the beds. Even the doctors were walking around, checking on everyone. Someone even had a panic attack. War changes a person. It changes how you perceive things. Sounds you never used to notice. They trigger you now, really badly. At night, when I come home and there's a little light on the air conditioner, I cover it up. Because my brain goes, that light is visible from the sky. A drone might spot it and drop a grenade on me. And I can't sleep like that. I also can't sleep undressed. It doesn't have to be pajamas. It has to be clothes. Like a tracksuit or something, then I can fall asleep. Because I've gotten used to always being ready to get up instantly and do something. Anything. When you're living in dugouts, you don't take your clothes off, because any second there could be an attack or shelling or something else. And what? Are you going to be running around naked? No, you have to be ready, dressed. Even now, walking around Kiev, on my way to a book fair, I've got a tourniquet in my bag and an individual first aid kit. Because what if something hits? Yes, it's Kiev, and the chances are lower, but it could happen. I'm just used to it now. War changes people, even civilians, even if they think it hasn't changed them. Even those who didn't join the army, or who are hiding or dodging draft notices, they've been changed too, because that person used to think of themselves as a decent, ordinary human being, and now they're hiding from their duty. And that changes them. When they lie to themselves or convince themselves it's all fine, that alone is already a change. War changes everything and everyone, just like that.
I want to ask you about the hospital because when I read your post on Facebook about the hospital, I couldn't wait any longer, so I wrote you straight away. But before we get to the hospital, are you missing him? Do you miss Pavlo from before the war, the non-military one?
Yeah, it was just a normal life, nothing special. Honestly, it felt completely different back then. Really carefree, if you ask me. And yeah, I do miss it. I really do.
Коли я прочитала ваш допис з лікарні не один, when I read your post from the hospital, it really made me think. As a journalist, I've heard many women's stories. Women living under occupation, women who fled the war, women who once had successful and comfortable lives in Ukraine, but then became refugees. Beside their daily struggles, a huge challenges in the change in status and how it affects you unconsciously. You want to say, but I've achieved so much, I'm successful, yet it feels like no one listens anymore because you are just a refugee. You have to come to terms with the new reality, the norm. There are so many tragic, sad, surprising, sometimes even heavy stories among women. Men, on the other hand, are fewer in these emotional stories because they tend to be less expressive, I think. They don't often seek therapy or go live on social media, talk about their feelings. Your post from the hospital opened a small window into what's going on inside men's hearts. I'm sure it touched you too. The endless love, protection, admiration in the society. Like, person in a pixel, thank you for protecting us, people say in the street. The recognition and gratitude definitely exist. Of course, there are young men, unmarried men, and maybe some social media competitions, but there are also those whose lives are shattered. Families broken, children separated, relationships that were barely holding on before the war and might have had a chance to be repaired. Now, not only they are physically wounded, if we are talking about the hospital, but many feel emotionally betrayed. When they turn to their loved ones for help to become whole again, they often turned away or left alone because life goes on. Wives disappeared, leave or move away. Please tell me more about this part.
Well, what exactly are you interested in?
I'm interested in those stories, how the war changes and basically destroys personal lives. Those love stories, family stories.
Well, it's hard for me to speak for others, maybe even for myself. For the most part, things are okay on that front. My wife supports me, you know? When I first came home from the first battles, we had some pretty tough fights on the Kherson front, and I was directly involved. We took a village, held it. Everything was intense. Those were the first losses, wounded and dead guys. After that, I got about 5 days of leave. I came to Kiev, and my wife also came here. She had fled with the kids to the Carpathians at the start of the war. So she came from there, and I came from the Kherson front to Kyiv. The first night, I almost killed her. I tried to strangle her, because in the middle of the night, I woke up and couldn't understand where I was. I thought I was still at the Kherson front. I was trying quietly, in the dark, to reach out to my guys. Where are you? Are you there? Can you hear me? I was trying to find my weapon, but there was none. My wife said, "It's okay, you're home." But I heard a strange voice, not my comrades, and I thought, ah, so the Russians came, our guys retreated, they forgot about me. What am I going to do? I'll at least take one Russian with me, and then we'll see. And I lunged at her and tried to strangle her. She screamed, "Pasha, it's me." Later, when I calmed down, thank God she's alive, I tried to find a way to explain what I felt inside. I think I found it. Have you watched horror movies?
Mhm.
Even though you know it's fake, actors, fake blood, cameras, crew, you still get scared. That's what happened to me. I understood I was home, everything was fine, but I still reacted like it was a horror movie. I was
Ну, тобто
scared.
знати за мною.
She didn't sleep in the same room with me for the rest of those days.
Но
But I had solid
я до того,
support from
що
her. She
м,
understood, didn't ask too many questions,
як
and when needed, I'd tell her
ну,
or
саме в
not.
мене така нормальна підтримка завжди. Саме в мене нормальне завжди розуміння. В мене вони не задають зайвих питань там. А як там? Коли треба, я можу сам розповім. Чи не розповім. Е, Там не докучають, там якимись
She
дзвінками.
didn't bombard me with calls or messages like, "How are
Ну,
you?
я у
Are you
відповідь
okay?"
розумію, що
I understood they worried when
переживають,
I
там
was
вони
going on
розуміють,
combat
мене бойове
missions.
завдання, я пишу так.
I'd say, I
Я
won't
буду
be
на
in touch for a
зв'язку
week, or sometimes 3
2 тижні,
days.
ну,
Then
наприклад,
I'd add a few more
да?
days, just in
Я
case
розумію,
something
що 3,
happened.
ну давай додамо
So
там
7
щось не
days.
так, туди-сюди,
If I
додамо, що
didn't
вам
get in
5
touch
днів,
by
там
then,
скільки там,
they'd start
добре,
worrying and call the
тобто
unit.
кажу тиждень. Якщо через тиждень я не вийду на зв'язок, починаю турбуватися, подзвонив частину, вияснив там. А якщо все буде норм, я вийду на зв'язок. До речі, у мене була ситуація. Е, Це був Харківський напрямок, і я завжди не беру телефон з собою на бойові завдання. Ну, або
Usually, I never
про те,
took my phone on missions
що щось
in
відбулося.
case I got
І телефон
captured or something
це
bad
зараз
happened
твій
because the phone
помічник.
has all your contacts.
А я взяв телефон, бо мене просив на той час продюсер,
But
який я
once,
працюю
a
на цементрі,
producer from the film
записати,
I Work at the Cemetery
заробити якийсь
asked me
запис
to record
для
a message for
телевізійний.
the audience.
І я взяв з собою
So I
телефон. На
took the
тій
phone with
позиції
me to the
вийшов з
position,
телефоном,
thinking
попрацював,
I'd
бачу,
record a
ворог
heroic
вийде з
message
ночі,
during
там щось
combat.
буде бахати, а я тут запишу. Ну, коротше, героїчний герой в середині війни передає привіт. Повинно бути дуже красиво. Ага. Ну, і нам кажуть, ну ви зайдете там на 2 тижні. За 2 тижні щось таке. Я кажу дружині, так, ну дивись, десь е, давай мене не буде днів 20.
We were told we'd
Якщо
be
там
there about
відбудеться
2
таке щось,
weeks.
мене
I
20,
told my
а ні,
wife I'd be out of
саме
contact
на
for
тиждень,
about 20
тиждень ми
days.
виходили, на тиждень. Я
Actually,
туди
we
добавив,
stayed for
сказав
about a
десь
week,
днів
but I
10,
added
якщо
some
буде
extra days
воєнна
just
небезпека,
in
тоді будемо
case.
відбуватися.
We were in the front
Ми
line
просиділи
trench, very close,
в передовій
maybe
мішені,
200 to
ну,
300 meters from the
за
Russian
200-300
trenches.
метрів до, ну, самий перед, до російських цих окопів метрів 200-300. Дуже складно, декілька накатів було, відбувалися постійні обстріли. Днів 5 лів дощ,
It
промок
was tough,
весь, от прям
constant
зовсім
shelling for
зовсім.
5
І
days.
потім вийшло
It
сонечко,
rained. I was
якось
soaked.
стихло все. І я
Then the
себе
sun came
ізолював
out.
і
I took
все
off all my
посохло.
wet gear to
Зняв з
dry,
себе
took off my boots, and laid
берці,
down on
такі
some dirt
весь
steps.
красивий. Виліз на на такі на сходинки такі, які ну, земляні там, і такий розлягся, прям все хорошо, красиво. Да. Ну і так придрімав, і не
Suddenly,
почув,
I
як
didn't notice a mine
прилетів
landed
поруч снаряд,
nearby.
і уламок мені прямо сюди прилетів. А тут у мене
It
в моєму кармані
exploded,
був
and a
телефон.
fragment hit right here. I had my
Це був
phone in my
телефон
chest pocket, and the phone
мобільний
took the hit.
з цим уламком.
I still have it with the
Ну,
fragment
в общем,
stuck in
я
it.
там
We went down
в
into a
траншею, в
trench, and
нору,
the
там
shelling
це все.
continued. I didn't have a working phone.
Ну і телефону немає. А в цілому ми просиділи, не пам'ятаю, ну більше 20 днів. 25, 24, щось туди.
We stayed there for
Ну
about
ось, виходжу
24
я,
or 25 days. When we got
возять
out,
нас, ми
we
такі,
were a
там
mess,
ми
dirty, covered in
кусок
mud,
гімна
just a
просто.
piece of crap, really.
От суцільний кусок гімна. В тебе бруд в трусах, в тебе, ну ти просто, в тебе земля, под говно і палки. Ну, в общем. Я розумію, що мені треба зателефонувати до
I knew
дружини,
I had to call my
сказати,
wife and let her
що
know I
відбувається.
was alive and
От.
okay.
А в мене з телефону вбитий. Ну, в мене, я її номер пам'ятаю. знаю на пам'ять. Я
But my
пам'ятаю,
phone
коли
was
в мене був
broken.
телефон,
I
я
memorized her
просто
number. I
зателефонував.
asked a comrade
Ну,
to lend
я
me
в
his
мене відразу
phone so
просто
I could
якось
call her quickly. I
вона
was
через
sure
декілька
she'd
днів
start
повинна була
worrying.
почати
It had
хвилюватися,
already been
побачити.
10 days, and now 25.
Я телефоную, а вона не відповідає. Я телефоную, вона не відповідає. Я телефоную, вона не
I
відповідає.
called, but she
Нарешті я
didn't
дзвоню
answer.
на
I called
ну,
again, no
там не
answer.
вона, там її подружка, ну там знайома.
Finally, someone picked
І
up,
вона така
not
голос
her, but her
взагалі, о,
friend or
привіт, це я, все
acquaintance.
нормально, все
She
там.
said,
Я слышу,
Masha, don't
Маша не
worry.
переживай,
It's him.
это
He's alive.
он живой,
Talk
да,
to
он
him.
разговаривает.
Masha was
Привет.
crying. She
Она
thought someone was
вирішила, що її
calling to
телефон
tell her I was
зареєстрований
dead.
з незнайомого номера. І вона не
She
хотіла
didn't
брати
want to pick
слухавку,
up
вона
at
бігала
first,
там у
ran
приміщення
around trying to
і
get someone
слухала
else
цю
to
розмову.
answer.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Well, that's just
Тому
how
що
our family
це
life is.
дуже... Ну, так.
And when the
Постоянно
guys over
сімейні
there,
конфлікти.
well, when they cry, we're all human. People cry because they feel abandoned or forgotten. What do you say to them? What do they need to hear in that moment to somehow cope?
Ой, це дуже індивідуальна штука. Не знаю. Комусь взагалі не
Oh,
треба
that's a
нічого
very
казати.
individual
Ну, да,
thing.
це
I don't
треба,
know. Some
треба,
people don't need
щоб
to say anything at
просто
all.
була людина, якій до того хлопця
I think what's
ніколи.
important is that there's just someone nearby who doesn't care
І
about
про
that
зло
guy,
до цій
and
людини.
the guy also doesn't care about
Ну,
that person.
навіть якщо вони раптом просто помовчать. Це
If
все,
that's the
я не
case,
знаю,
then everything is
по-різному.
fine,
На мою думку, все дуже
even if
індивідуально.
they just stay silent.
Ну,
I don't know. In my opinion, it's all very
штука
individual.
доволі розповсюджена. Сім'ї розвалюються, бо 3 роки війни, 3 роки не всі там
It's
часто.
quite common for families to fall
Більш-менш
apart
нормально
because
все
of the
проходило.
war.
Перші 2 роки все було
3 years of
слабо.
war.
Перший рік взагалі
Not
не
everyone comes home
так
often.
от 5 днів якихось. І то це було після якихось
Things only
товаришо-ведмедських
started getting somewhat
завдань.
normal with leaves recently. The first 2 years were very
Ну, це
difficult.
ще
I don't even
те,
remember
що...
having any leaves the first
Ну, я
year,
пам'ятаю, я от
except
приїжджав
for those
якось
5 days here and there, and that was only after
приїжджаєш,
really
що,
tough
що
combat
хочу
missions.
побачитись, буду
Also,
зустрічатись,
there's this thing.
зла там
When I
справа.
came home, I didn't
Буду
really
ще
want to see
розказувати, як
anyone.
насправді. Ну,
You
дуже
come
багато
back and people
буває.
ask you
Ну, тобто,
questions
що
like,
вони
How are
думають,
you?
якої ти раси,
What's
хочеш
going
сказати,
on?
нахер нам що
But what are you
зробити,
supposed to
потрібна
say?
інформація якась.
The truth would be a
Зрозуміти
complete
все, вони
disaster.
зрозуміють.
What kind of reaction are you
Чоловіка, що
expecting from
просить
them?
жалю.
Do you even
Пораду
need their
дати. Ну,
reaction?
можете мені дати
They won't
пораду, я
understand
ніколи.
anyway.
Ну, тобто,
What good is their
що?
pity? What
Немає
advice can they
ніякого, ти не
give you?
розумієш сенсу
They've
про
never
це
been through it,
спілкуватися з
so
кимось.
there's no real point in talking to
Е,
someone about it.
З
Over
часом стає
time,
легше. От як
it
на
gets
мене,
easier,
порозуміння
in my experience. That's just my
мій
personal
досвід
view. I can't
особистий,
speak for
досвід особистий.
everyone.
Я не можу казати за
Maybe
всіх. Мені
some
там
people get
спочатку
help from
допомагає. Мені допомагає
psychologists.
час.
For
Більше
me,
про
time
часу. Ну,
helps.
може, ще то, що я
Maybe
пишу.
also writing helps
Я так
me. It's a way for me to
виговорюю
vent and get it out of my
емоції
system.
від себе
I know why I
розрядити.
write, but I don't really understand why
Навіщо я
people
пишу, не
read
знаю.
about the war now
Це я
as
вигадую.
if we
Я
haven't
розумію,
had enough
навіщо
of
зараз
it.
читають про війну.
Why
Це
do we
для
need
мене
to
це
read
чому
more?
війни мало? Нахер нам потрібно що ще читати. А, ну, для мене от працює
For me, writing
писання
and
і
time
час.
probably work. And
Ну і
yes,
да,
I'm lucky that my
буває
family understands me
розуміє,
well.
нормально розуміє. Нормально розуміє.
Look, one of the reasons Ukraine is fighting because Ukraine wants to be independent, protect its identity. You are an ethnic Russian from Donbas, and the war came to you in 2014. Besides, I suspect that apart from fighting to protect your relatives, your child, your wife, everything you had and built before the war, is there also this aspect of ethnic Russian identity? After all, the ethnic Russianness still exists, right? What's your take?
Я би
I
казав
wouldn't
про
talk
етнічну
about ethnic
російськість,
Russianness,
почнемо з мого
at
боку,
least not from my point of
етнічно-руська
view.
рускість.
Ага. Ану, розкажіть.
Я розумію, що просто в українській мові, да, мова, вона каже про
I'd say I'm
росіянин,
ethnically
але
Ruski,
я не росіянин.
Ruski, not Rossianin,
Етнічно я росіянин.
Rosianin. I understand that in
Це
Ukrainian
неправда.
the term is just
Це дуже неправильно.
Rosianin, but I'm not a Russian
Росіяни
in the
це
civic or political sense.
якісь там не тільки русські,
Ethnically,
буряти,
I'm
чечени
Ruski.
і все решта.
Ruski is more of a nation,
Росіяни це
a
вже якась
people.
ідеологічна штука.
Rossianin, on the
Вони
other hand,
об'єднані
includes all kinds of
всією
groups,
цією
Buryats,
ідеєю
Chechens,
правосілля.
others.
Да? Якщо ти сильний, то ти
Rossiane
сильний.
is already an ideological
Якщо ти сильний,
concept.
якщо в тебе є
They are
зброя,
united
то
by
ти
an
можеш воювати по
idea.
всьому світу, як
The
хочеш.
idea that
Можливо,
strength is what
гарно ти
gives you
це
the right
робиш,
to do anything.
гарно,
If
пофігу,
you're
ти
strong,
сильний, ви
you
будете
can
мене
bend
слухати,
others to your
робити, що я
will.
скажу. Це
If you
така
have
шапка
nuclear weapons,
воровська.
you can tell the world what to
От
do.
вони
It
саме
doesn't
ці
matter if you're right
русські
or
по
wrong.
сутності.
They
Всі
don't
вони з
care.
цього боку, вони не мають
If I'm
жодного значення.
strong, you'll listen to me and do as I say.
Етнічно я русський.
That's a thug
Так,
mentality,
склалося.
a criminal
Причому, що
ideology.
це
They've
є
built a
неправда.
national identity around that,
Це
and I
ми
have nothing in common with it.
дідусі, мамусі
Yes, I'm Ruski by
перекопали це.
ethnicity. That's
А
just how it
вже
happened. I
українство
didn't choose it.
це,
It was
це
passed
вже
on to
вибір.
me by my
Це
grandparents,
вибір.
my mother, my
Я
father, and
міг
so on.
бути,
But being Ukrainian,
належати до будь-якої
that was my
держави, коли
personal
вже
choice. When I
почав
grew
сам
up and
себе
started thinking for
називати
myself,
будь-яку
I
країну
could have chosen to belong to any
бути
country.
громадянином
I could have
будь-якої
become a
країни. Це
citizen of
супер.
any nation.
Але я обрав
But I
собі це.
chose this
Це
one.
мій вибір.
That was my
Це свій
decision.
вибір. Я
And
буду
I'll
робити
fight for that
за
choice,
свій вибір,
for
за
my way
своє
of life,
життя,
for my
за
way of
світ
seeing the
усвідомлення
world,
цього
for
світу,
dignity,
за
freedom,
те,
for the right to be
за
myself,
свободу,
for my
за те, щоб
family,
бути самим
for
собою,
what we
за
have.
родину, за
That's
те,
what
що
I'll
в нас
fight
є.
for.
Да,
And to
я
me,
буду бути.
those are very different things.
Це дуже різні штуки, як на мене.
Different, very different. This was originally a conversation about Crimea, but I think can be stretched a bit to apply more broadly. In one of his interviews on CNN, President Obama, and I actually saved the clip somewhere, still try to find it, he was asked, well, why did you kind of let Crimea slide back in 2014? And he said, well, people there spoke Russian, the situation was very different.
I think the Ukraine of that time is not the Ukraine that we're talking about today. There's a reason why there was not an armed invasion of Crimea, because Crimea was full of a lot of Russian speakers, and there was some sympathy to the view that Russia was representing its interests. The Rada at the time, the Ukrainian parliament itself, still had a number of Russian sympathizers, and the politics inside Ukraine were more complicated.
So that's why, at that time, Obama decided to just send us blankets.
Well, maybe then he should give America to Britain. They speak English there too, right?
Да? А чому б ні?
Why not? Seems logical to me, based on his logic. All right then, let's go with that.
Donbas, where I'm from the eastern Ukraine, there always has been this narrative, and they have different identity, they are different people. Well, before the small war, or before the Russians invaded, they used to say that Donbas feeds everyone, supports the whole country, and so on. But clearly, all of that didn't reflect the reality. And I know that in one of your books, Grandma Didn't Like to Die, you explore this identity, the identity in the East. What is like the identity in the East, and how different it is really? Because Ukraine is, after all, a large country.
Well, if we're going to talk specifically about identity, and specifically about the identity of Donbas, we need to understand a few key preconditions. The first precondition is the Holomor, which was artificially created by the Russian authorities, the KGB, and all the rest of them.
Саме центральне, найбільша
It
кількість
mostly affected
українців там
Donbas.
знаходиться.
That central region, one of the hardest hit, had the largest number of people who died.
Тут
That's the
ринок,
first
шахти,
point.
заводи, які там будувалися, виробництва. Їхали росіяни з усіх куточків Росії.
Secondly, in terms of identity, after that, people, Russians from all over the USSR, started moving there to the mines, factories, and industries being built. And this was done to dilute the existing Ukrainian identity that was there. A huge number of different peoples of the USSR were brought in, but mostly Russians. That's actually how I myself ended up there, because my grandfather moved there. And the same thing is happening now in Crimea. The number of Ukrainians who were originally there may not have decreased significantly, but the number of Russians increased. They keep coming. They build new housing. They offer benefits. They do everything to encourage people to move there from Russia. And if you look at the percentage, the proportion of Ukrainians in Crimea has significantly dropped. The same thing happened in Donbas. At a certain point, the percentage of Ukrainians living there became lower than the percentage of other groups who were intentionally resettled there by the Soviet authorities. Also, let's not forget that many of those brought in were criminals or prisoners sent there for forced labor. And so, the identity that formed was artificial, with a decreased number of Ukrainians, a strong Russian presence, and a criminal subculture with all its elements. As a result, what emerged was a kind of hybrid identity, people who absorbed Ukrainian identity and culture from surrounding villages, but also absorbed influences from Russian, Georgian, Jewish, Kazakh, and other cultures. It created something in between, and it's with this in-between identity that it became very easy to work, to manipulate. That's why what happened in Donbas was possible. But for example, in Kharkiv, it didn't work out, even though they tried. And in Odessa, despite great efforts, they also failed. Why? Because in those places, the percentage of Ukrainians remained higher, and people were still able to preserve their Ukrainian identity. For the most part, that's how it is.
Very interesting. Pavlo, when will your books be available in English?
Well, Grandma is available in Estonian. I have that one.
It's not English.
It was a great story about this Estonian translation, by the way. I had just come out of a combat mission, and at that time we didn't have many Starlinks yet, so we used mobile internet when we returned from the front lines. But my mobile internet only worked in a certain village where we were resting after fighting. The signal was really bad, like down in a dip, and for the mobile internet to work, I had to climb up on the roof of a house, right on top of the roof. So yeah, I climb up there, and I get an email on Gmail. It's from an Estonian publishing house. They said they had read my book, Grandma Didn't Like to Die, and they wanted to translate it. They were asking me to sell them the translation rights, and I had just come off a combat mission. I'm sitting there on the rooftop like, no way, what are you talking about? There's a war going on around me, some village here, and suddenly, Estonia. I reply to them, are you out of your minds? Don't mess with me. And they write back, we're serious. Here's a contract. Please read it. So I read it. Thought, okay, why not? I signed the contract right there on that rooftop and sent it off. Later, something else happened. I can't remember what exactly, some other fighting. We got out again and then, ping ping, money hit my account. And you know, in Private 24, our banking app, when you get money, the sound it makes is the same for everyone. So we're driving into a village, signal comes back, and I get the notification. Money came in. And this one guy goes, "Oh what, we got paid. Check your accounts." I look, and it's money from the Estonian publisher. I go, "Nice, drinks on me."
Ми якось там потрапили в такий доволі складний бій і думали, що ми живемо
By
цілком
the
нормально.
way, at one point, we were in a pretty tough battle, one of those where we honestly thought we weren't going to make it out alive. It was really, really bad. But we all made it. Not even a single wounded guy, all alive. Everything turned out okay.
Живі всі, все прям норм. І приїжджає там коробочка за нами.
A van came to pick us up. We ran to it, jumped in, and it drove us back behind the lines. We were all so happy, like, we survived. Oh my God, this is the best feeling ever. Then one of our brothers in arms starts crying, really sobbing. And I'm like, come on, don't worry. Look, we're alive, we're safe. We'll go get ice cream, everything's great. And he's crying and says, you don't get it. I've been secretly saving 10,000 hryvnias from every paycheck onto a separate card. I told my wife we were getting 10,000 less than we actually were. And yesterday, when everything was going to hell and I thought I was going to die, I gave her the card with all the savings. But now, I'm alive. And now she knows about the stash. She knows how much we actually make. I don't have my secret fund anymore. I wish I'd just died. And the driver says, this feels just like a wedding. Crying, laughing, music playing, and we're all driving along.
I really like the story you told in the interview with Ukrainian journalist Ivanov about the peace negotiations when they put you in the van and you were driving too and you saw it all. Could you please tell the story for our viewers?
Well, listen, this was during one of those times when people had started talking again about maybe trying to end all of this somehow. You know, saying things like, we're not getting the weapons we need. Maybe it's time to negotiate. Maybe we should talk. And we had just come back from a very tough deployment. Well, they're all tough, but this one was especially long and exhausting. We had spent a long time on the front line, and we were finally heading back, just completely worn out, just wrecked. We all jumped into the van, the box, and we were driving back. Everyone was sitting there completely silent, beaten down, totally drained. So just to check in with the guys, I go, so what? You're all that burned out already. Hey, what if, just imagine, they said, that's it, war's over, everyone go home. Would you go? And the guys are like, to hell with that, go home, screw that, get lost. And I was like, all right, just asking. Cool. You see, fatigue builds up, and we were all really tired. But that's normal. It's okay to be exhausted when it's the 4th year of war. But the thing is, we're not fighting just for houses or some territory. We're fighting for something much bigger. We're fighting for values.
Щоб людьми лишатися, щоб свободними
We're fighting to stay human, to be
Саме за
free,
принципи
for the very principles of life,
проти принципів бандитського життя і
against the
принципів життя
principles of a criminal
свободного.
world, and for the
Тому
values of a free
завдяки
person.
тому
And that's why, no
у
matter
нас
how
люди
tired we
навчаються
get, we always
жити,
have
саме тому
strength
що
left.
це не там, не знаю, ні про якісь ні
Because this isn't
пустяки,
about
ні про
perks,
гроші,
or
ні про
money,
якісь
or
там
buns,
булочки,
or
ні про
buildings.
якісь там будинки.
This is a
Ні,
conflict of worldviews.
це конфлікт світа сприйняття. Тому так,
So yes, of
якщо
course we
продовжити,
keep going,
як би не було
even when it's hard.
складно.
Pavlo, I ask this question to all of my guests. Usually at the end, I'd like to ask you too. What do you love about Ukraine?
Я люблю її за те, що я
I love Ukraine
можу
because
лишатися
here
самим
I
собою.
can be myself. You know,
Я
I thought about this for a
взагалі
long
довго думав,
time.
і це
There
було
was
ще
this old
колись,
Soviet
до речі,
movie
радянською
that had a
да?
so-called formula for
Формула життя
life:
була
find your
знайти своє
people and
місце.
calm down. And for a long time I believed in
І
that,
я прям довго
that
думав, що
all you
це про
needed
це.
was to find your
Треба
people and
просто знайти
settle
своє місце і
down.
заспокоїтись. Але
But over
з
time I
часом я
realized
зрозумів,
that
що це
something
таки
about that
марна
formula
справа.
was wrong.
Бо
Because calming
заспокоїтися
down,
вже прям
that's like the end of everything. That's stopping.
закінчилося все. Ні.
No,
Треба
what you
знайти
really
людей,
need is
з
to
якими ти
find the
можеш
people
бути
with
самим
whom you
собою.
can be fully yourself,
Сміятися, коли
to
тобі смішно,
laugh
не
when you feel like
сміятися,
laughing, not just when everyone else is
коли
laughing,
всі регочуть.
to not laugh when something doesn't
Бути
feel
самим
funny to
собою.
you,
Це головне.
even if everyone
Бо
else
саме
is.
коли ти
To be yourself,
стаєш самим
that's what
собою,
matters
ти можеш
most.
зробити
And when you are
дуже
truly
багато речей.
yourself,
Бо
that's when you can do incredible
я кажу завжди,
things.
що, наприклад,
I always
ні
say
одну
any
книгу
person can write one
дуже
great,
цікаву,
interesting, popular book,
яка буде тобі
because every
допомагати
person
розвиватися
is
як
unique,
людина.
and that
Бо
uniqueness can produce
людина
something original.
кожна не схожа на
You
іншу,
just have
і
to be
покладено робити
yourself.
щось
But
оригінальне.
staying
Це головне
yourself,
самим
that's the
собою.
hard part.
А от лишатися самим
That's
собою
why
це
it's so
просто.
important to find those
Саме
people,
через те
that place,
треба знайти
that
людей,
country, where you can truly be
держави,
yourself.
ті умови,
And
в яких ти
then
можеш
you can
бути
do
самим собою.
something great.
Тоді ти зможеш зробити
That's
щось
why I love
неймовірне.
Ukraine,
За це
because
я
it's
люблю
a
країну.
country where I can be
Це
myself.
країна, де я можу бути самим собою.
Oh my God, thank you so much. You know, as I'm talking with you now, I'm thinking you'll be back to the trenches soon. And then we will do another interview, like, our correspondent reporting from the front line.
Да. До речі, зв'язано з всіма цими
By the
Starlink'ами, ти
way,
можеш
thanks to all these
вести
Starlinks, you can go to some remote place,
І в мене
like a
мама,
complete
живе в
nowhere,
Німеччині.
and still
Вона
stay connected. My mum,
чесно
who
знала,
lives in
що
Germany, didn't even know I was fighting for a
зараз
long time. She only found
і
out
вона як,
later,
коли
before, when I'd say, I'm
врешті
going
говорить,
offline.
там,
I won't
я
be on the
поїхав,
network.
я не
I'll
буду
check in
в
after
мережі,
some time.
я
That was how it
відписуюсь
was.
через декілька
But
часов,
now you
казав.
can be
А
somewhere
зараз не
out
можу
in the
бути,
middle of
бути в
nowhere
мережі.
and still
І
be
вона
online. I
запам'ятала це.
remember once we were sitting in some
Щось
dugout and there was
перекладати
shooting
нема.
or something going on
Я вижу,
around
ти в
us,
мережі, все
and my
нормально,
mom
ти що, бачиш,
messages
все
me,
хорошо, да? Ти ж где-то с
"Oh, I
тобой.
see you're online. So everything's okay, right? You must be somewhere in the rear." And I said,
Да,
"Yes,
зараз
Mom,
сучасний світ, і
almost.
можна
This is the modern
перекладатися, ти можеш
world.
сидіти
You can
десь
stay
в якомусь
connected.
бліндажі і
You
слухати
can be sitting somewhere in a
там,
dugout,
чи
listening
навчатися
to
на якихось
lectures or
конференціях.
joining a
Я
conference.
так, не знаю,
While I was on the
тиждень
front
назад
lines, I
сидів,
was actually a judge for a story
оповідання,
competition.
да,
I
проводив.
managed to read the stories
Я
just
подивився,
fine.
перечитав, і
Yeah,
нормально.
the modern
Сучасний
world is
світ.
like that.
That's true. It's absolutely true. Oh God, Pablo, thank you so much. I'm really grateful. I want you to know that this is just the first part and there's part two, part three, because you said it exactly right. War is life. And about your comment on why people read about war, war has come to all of us. And it doesn't matter if you're walking through Mostetsky Arsenal in Kiev or here in South London, it's the same. Whether I want it or not, it's here with me.
Є різниця. Я
There's a
відмовляю.
difference, I'll tell you this. Missiles, rockets, they don't fly over my house. Missiles don't fly here. That's true. But I'm talking about this state, this feeling that I don't feel separated from it. That's what I'm telling you. At the beginning of the invasion, it was really hard for me to meet with my Ukrainian girlfriends here. I don't have many of them, but still, it was hard because this heaviness of grief is so strong. And even when you meet with two or three of them, it doesn't get easier. It's like you are being hit by a slab of concrete.
Знаєте, я
You
якось
know, I was once in
був в
Kramatorsk.
Краматорську. Це
That's
доволі
pretty
близько
close to the
від
war zone, I don't know,
20 кілометрів
about
від
20
базі.
kilometers from the front
Але там
line.
ще
There are
доволі
still
багато
quite a few
цивільних.
civilians there.
Я
I was
йшов
walking
по
down the
вулиці,
street,
і там
and there
була
was a
дівчинка
children's playground.
позаду. На неї,
A little girl,
мабуть,
about 5 years old,
було років
was
5,
riding on some
каталася
kind of swing. Her mom was sitting nearby,
а поруч
and there was
була
no one
мама.
else
Нікого
around,
взагалі не було.
just them,
Просто її
completely
там
alone.
нікого не було.
The girl wasn't really
Ця
sad,
дівчинка,
she was
ну,
just
просто
quietly sitting there, riding, looking off in one direction and around.
дивилася
I
в
thought, when you're 25, maybe you don't have money, a good job, or good friends nearby,
От коли
so you can't really enjoy yourself, can't spend time doing things you love.
немає нормальної роботи, нормальних друзів поруч, то в принципі, і ти щось таке не можеш нормально погуляти, не можеш нормально провести час, не можеш там займатися любимою справами.
Then you turn
А коли
30
тобі
and
30,
you get
в
money,
тебе
and
з'являється
you can
гроші,
catch
ти
up on
можеш
all the
розслабитися,
things you
те, що
didn't
треба
do
зробити,
at
це ти можеш
25.
зробити в 30.
You
Та
can
й
do
це
them at
супер. А
30
якщо
or
ти
even
нормальний, ти
35.
40 можеш це
If you've
зробити,
kept
то ти
yourself
можеш
well,
в 10.
even at
А те,
40,
що ти
you
не
can
робив
do
в
things you
5,
didn't do at
ти
25.
можеш в 10
But
робити.
what you didn't do at 5 years old, you won't do at
5
10.
років
5 years old, that
це
5-year-old
досвід
experience of
десятирічний.
play, interaction with children and adults,
Спілкування з дітьми,
socialization,
спілкування з
exploring the
дорослими,
world, that
соціалізація,
experience never comes
пізнання
back.
світу. 5-річний саме. Він ніколи більше не повториться. От ми всі знаємо, яка земля на смак, правда? Ви
We
знаєте,
all
яка
know
земля на
what
смак?
dirt tastes like,
Ну,
right?
згадайте.
You know
Знаєте?
what dirt
Ну,
tastes
я думаю,
like.
що ви не
Remember?
згадаєте,
Okay, I bet you don't really remember when you tasted dirt,
але ж ви
but
знаєте,
you
що
know
воно
what
на
it
смак.
tastes like.
Тобто колись
Because when you
колись,
were a
я
baby,
знаю,
6
коли ви
months,
були
a year,
ну, коли ви себе
before
ще
you
не
could
пам'ятаєте,
remember
цю
yourself,
землю
you
спробувати.
tried
Це
dirt.
був ваш досвід.
That was your 1-year-old
Ви знаєте, яка
experience.
земля на смак.
And you know what dirt tastes
Як
like,
багато
along
всього
with
іншого.
so many
І
other
цей
things.
досвід, його
And
неможливо
that
повторити.
experience can't be repeated.
І ця 5-річна
That
дівчинка,
5-year-old
і такі
girl, and so many kids because of this war,
втрачають цей
they're
досвід.
losing that
Ніколи
experience
більше
that will
не
never happen
І
again.
вони не будуть 10 років гратися в ці ігри, які б вони повинні були гратися 5-річні. Я те до
They
того,
won't
що
spend 10 years
навколо
playing the
всі
games
війна,
5-year-olds are supposed to
навколо всі
play.
війни, навколо всі
Around
війни.
them, there's war.
У
Not
кого
everyone is
там
surrounded by it, that's true. Some people aren't. But for many, yes,
Це нормально.
we,
Знаєте, мозок людини, він взагалі людина,
well, that's normal, you know.
вона
The
не
human brain,
нормалізує те,
people,
що
it doesn't normalize what's happening around. More accurately, it doesn't transform what's around.
Вона не перетворює
Instead, it plunges into this reality and tries to normalize it, to explain it to itself. So when there's a war happening somewhere, you think, yeah, it's hard for me too. I'm also in a war. That's normal. It's normal to rationalize so you don't lose your mind. That's very normal. But that doesn't change the reality itself, right? It changes our attitude toward the reality. But the reality is that the war is there, right there, about 500 kilometers from me right now.
От від мене зараз за 500 кілометрів.
I understand what you're saying, not about the war specifically, let's set that aside. My husband died 4 months ago. It wasn't sudden, he had cancer. And Well, now it's like them. Honestly, I can only really talk about this with those who have lost their husbands or those loved ones has died, because there are no words for this. It's what's between the lines, something you never explained to anyone until you felt it yourself. So I put down the subject war in southern London and I check my words back. And it seems like it's a wave at me even here. That's actually what I wanted to say. And by the way, about the sounds, you talked about how the guys are afraid of sounds and all of them. It seems that after my first trip to Ukraine, well, after the full-scale war started, the whole TV crew made us install those apps. We were traveling with security consultant. Well, I installed it, and then I still keep missing alerts, and every morning I woke up and I didn't know if it was hotel, maybe it just wasn't scared. But the point is, when I came back, I had this feeling, my people are dying there under missiles, and here you get on a peaceful train and go to work. And I thought, I'm not deleting this app. I'll be on the train, and if it goes off, they know the war in Ukraine. So I was waiting for that moment. Usually, after these trips, there's the context, because my trips were like months in Ukraine or 2 months here, because shorter trips didn't make sense, and you didn't get all the work done. So when I returned, my little one, she was 10 then, now she's 12. She slept with me sometimes for 2 or 3 weeks after my return. She was like that close to me. And I realized she only came down and returned to normal after she slept in her bed, in her own room after a while. And when do you think happened? And what do you think happened one morning? Mom, the hero, decided not to delete the app. It was 5 a.m. The child was sleeping, and suddenly the phone started ringing. This um, alerts about the bombing. We all jumped up. The child was scared, and I couldn't find the phone. So I brought this anxiety here to show everyone what life in Ukraine is like. Yes, yes. After that, I decided maybe it's time to say goodbye to the app for the sake of my child.
Да, це була
Yes, it was a
сама,
cruel
сама,
joke.
сама
Something
ситуація
like that
така
happened.
була.
Well, you see, gosh, thank you very much.
Я вам
Well,
тільки
I
одну
am
річ
just
скажу,
saying,
що ця війна
this war
продовжиться.
with us forever.
And there's a question I wanted to ask you about historical memory, man. Holodomor. I'm from Kirovohrad region, central Ukraine. And for me, Holodomor didn't come through the official attempts or through the steps of President Yushchenko when the Holodomor was brought up to the all country level. I grew up hearing about it from my grandmother. Our village, where my mother is from, was surrounded by red soldiers, and at night, my grandfather was gathering ears of grain and was put in prison for that. My grandmother wrote letters to Stalin, and after what seems like 2 years, my grandfather was released, but he was supposed to serve longer. So Holodomor is an inseparable part of our history, and physically hurts me if there's any food left and I throw it away for some reasons. My husband always laughed at me because if there's a piece of something, I would wrap it up and save it for the next time. And he once told our guest, if you open our fridge, you'll find all sorts of things, beets, onions, and so on, until I use them again. And I remember my grandmother. She told me once when she was wiping the table after we ran away, she never threw away any breadcrumbs. She always ate it, and I was so ashamed that I couldn't understand it and thought, oh God, how could she? And she couldn't do it differently. As a teenager, she remembered all the horrors of Holodomor. And the question I want to ask you is this. The man, the Ukrainian man, who now basically, this is all being recorded in their DNA for future generations, this historical memory with these tragedies, this brotherhood, broken hearts, destroyed families. How do you think this historical memory will be recorded in that DNA now? What will it be like?
Ну, по-перше, я вам відверто кажу, це стосується не тільки чоловіків, стосується всіх. І
Well,
наші
first of
діти,
all,
які
I'll
зараз
be honest
знаходяться
with you.
під
This concerns
турботою
not only men,
наших
it concerns
громадян, у них
everyone.
також є свій цей військовий досвід і свій
Our
посттравматичний
children who
синдром,
are now under
який
air raid alerts, under
це
missile
також
strikes,
відбувається на
they
їхньому
also have their own military experience and their own
Наприклад,
post-traumatic stress.
моя дитина знає на шляху до школи, а їй треба проїхати трамваєм декілька зупинок, вона знає, де
This also affects their behavior.
сховище, де можна
For
втекти,
example, my child knows on the way to
і я
school. She has to take a tram
знаю
for
про
several
дітей, які
stops.
там приїжджають,
She knows where the bomb shelter is, where she
де
can
ви
run if
знаходитесь,
something
куди ви
happens.
їдете. А якщо раптом що, куди, де, як і що, наприклад. І діти, які
I know
можуть
children who
заявити
arrive
вас,
somewhere
і
and
я не
immediately
впевнений, що
ask,
дитина
"Where is
знає
your bomb
вас,
shelter?
наприклад, поза
Where do you
вас,
go if something
вона,
happens?
мабуть, знає,
And if
просто
suddenly something
телефонно
happens,
знайти.
where do I go?" For example,
Бо
children
телефон
who
може
maybe
ранити
don't even know
когось,
their parents'
позбутися
phone
батька
numbers by
настільки
heart.
легко і тішитися
Maybe they
цим
do,
назавжди.
maybe they
Їх
don't.
багато.
But it's important because a
Я
phone can
впевнений, я
get
завжди на це
lost,
кажу на
or you
інтерв'ю,
can get
і
lost
звичайно,
somewhere,
це моя
so you
глибока
have to
переконання,
memorize
що
it. These things stay with them forever. There are many such things.
книги, фільми
I'm
про цю
sure,
війну
and I
роблять саме
always say this in various interviews, and this
якийсь
is my
український
deep
список
conviction,
Шиндлера
that the
чи щось
best,
таке,
the most brilliant
знімуть
books
наші
and
діти.
films about this war
Бо
will be
коли
made
вже
by our
буде
children.
достатня відстань від цієї
They will
події,
create some kind
коли
of
зможуть
Ukrainian
подивитися
Schindler's
з іншого
List
боку,
or something like that, because they will have enough distance from the war to be
мені
able to
здається,
look at it from
сьогодні
the outside
ми
more
сильно
objectively.
травмовані.
We
Ми
are
сильно
very
занурені.
traumatized, very deeply
У
involved.
нас
Our
велика
ability to look
ця
at it
спроможність дивитися
dispassionately is disrupted,
відсторонено.
but they will have that ability.
Але з іншого
On
боку,
the other
їм
hand,
буде все
they
одно.
will still care because
Бо
this
ця
war is
війна
also inside them.
в
They
них
will have
є
this
це
historical
живе
memory
спостереження.
ingrained.
Що
Why it
це?
happened,
Навіщо це? Чому
what
це
it was
відбулося?
for.
Їм
They
буде
will
все одно.
feel the
Будуть
pain and want
приходити
to deal
воїни,
with it,
і вони
but they
будуть
will have
самі
the
до вас.
chance to
Але
look at
вони
it
будуть
with some
намагатися
detachment.
дивитися трохи
And the
відсторонено.
cultural masterpieces
Щодо
about this war will
культури,
be made
що
by them.
зроблять саме вони.
I agree with you 100%. Thank you so much, truly. Thank you very, very much. And I truly want us to have a conversation when you return there. When I'll be saying, "Oh, you're online, everything's okay, right?"
We'll live and see, and we'll stay in touch.
Yeah, definitely. Take care of yourself and enjoy.
Tell soldiers and people in general, we always wish them only one thing: luck. Luck is what we wish, because war is mostly about luck.
Тому
So taking care of yourself in war doesn't mean ignoring combat orders. You have to do your job, but wishing for luck is important.
What if I say this? I wish you luck and I want God to protect you. Will that be okay?
That would be okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a great day. Stay in touch, Pavlo. Take care.